This is an ABC News special report.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We're coming on the air because President Trump has announced a 90-day pause on tariffs against most nations while raising tariffs against China. The markets have jumped on the news right now. We're seeing the Dow up about 2,000 points. The president posted on social media saying, quote, "Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable." The president went on to say that based on the fact that more than 75 countries have reached out to the U.S. to negotiate, he is putting a 90-day pause on most other tariffs. I want to bring in our ABC senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, at the White House, where we just heard from the press secretary and the Treasury Secretary, on this. Rachel, how are they saying this is going to work now?
Yeah, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, as well as the press secretary Caroline Leavitt, are speaking to reporters right now here at the White House, trying to explain how the administration is going forward on this. So just the headline here, the president was asked about whether or not he was going to do a 90-day pause just days ago by our own Mary Bruce. He said at this time it was not something that he is considering. Now the president is going forward with that 90-day pause. For most of our trading partners, it will be at 10%. For everyone else but China. The tariffs are now rising to 125%. The White House is insisting that 75 countries have come to the table, have reached out to this administration and the White House to continue these negotiations. It is very notable that China really not a part of those discussions right now. You see this tit for tat between the United States and China as this trade war between us and one of our largest trading partners is now escalating. But the bottom line here, Diane, the president is pulling back on some of those retaliatory tariffs that he initially announced just days ago, Diane.
And I want to bring in Whit Johnson, who spent the morning on the New York Stock Exchange. Whit, this is at least partially the news that so many investors were hoping to hear.
This is exactly what people were asking for. The one thing that's sort of missing in all of this is the clarity and the specifics. Obviously, we have the 90-day pause. There's some time for investors to digest. But what's interesting with the 90-day is that's what basically people have been calling on the president to ask for. This morning, we heard from Bill Ackman, who's a billionaire, who's a longtime supporter of Donald Trump's, who came out publicly warning about the effects of these tariffs. He put out in a statement on X earlier in the day calling for specifically a 90-day pause. We also saw Jamie Dimon with JP Morgan, who had been talking about the increased likelihood of a recession. So we see all of these people who President Trump knows very well, who'd been calling for this pause. We saw the markets reacting, hanging on every single word from the president, but this gives them time to figure out what's going to happen next. Now, one thing that we did see this morning, which I think for people from the outside looking in, it was a little bit confusing. Why did, after the tariffs were announced overnight, why did the markets kind of go up and down, up and down? And it seemed as if from some of the traders that I was talking to, they were suggesting that some of the concern had sort of been baked in the previous 4 days where we saw those massive declines. I mean, up to $6 trillion, in the S&P alone. And so they were waiting. And that's why you're seeing it going up and down. Every little piece of news, every little hint from the administration about a negotiation, maybe some optimism, people were jumping in or people were jumping out. But this was that thing that they had been waiting for. But one piece of caution here, based on what I'm being told, is that, look, it's not over yet. You still have this escalating trade war between the U.S. and China. That's going to have a massive ripple effect. And so what does that mean? We don't know, but still some at least temporary good news when it comes to investors.
And let's dig a little deeper into that ripple effect with our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis. Rebecca, 90-day pause on most of these tariffs on the one hand, increased tariffs 125% on China. What does that mean for consumers?
Well, first of all, it's a stunning reversal. Just a week ago, the President Trump dubbed it Liberation Day and rolled out all of these so-called reciprocal tariffs. And now there's a 90-day pause on the majority of them, except for on China. First of all, those sources I'm talking to on Wall Street have anticipated that a lot of this has been with the idea of isolating China. And you even heard from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who's speaking right now, that early countries who have come and spoken to the United States, the likes of Vietnam, South Korea, India, Japan, countries that might have aligned themselves with China are going to be included in this 90-day pause. That said, China is still a very, very important trading partner with the United States. They export about $440 billion worth of goods here to the United States. A number of small businesses and big businesses rely on China, and it appears that things are continuing to escalate there with part of this directive, including that increased tariff on Chinese goods that are coming here to the United States. So when it comes to those items like clothes, shoes, toys, electronics, some furniture that are coming here from China, when we've been talking about these possible price increases, if the tariffs are to stay in effect, that is still on the table. Those price increases are still on the table, and anything that's coming from China, whether it's already left, happens to be in the water, on a ship in the water, they will still face at U.S. Customs those higher tariffs. And as we reported over and over again, generally speaking, what companies do is they pay that higher tariff, U.S. companies pay that higher tariff at the border as the goods come here, and then pass it off to consumers.
All right, Rachel, Rebecca Witt, thank you. And we will continue to watch closely. The market's now up a little more than 2,000 on the Dow, and we will continue to monitor action at the White House on this as well. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. And David Muir will be back tonight with the entire team of World News Tonight. I'm Diane Macedo in New York. Have a great day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.